Today I've got Kyle Jones on the line. How's it going, Kyle?
Hey, Lane. It's going good. How are you, man?
Yeah, good. So this is the second or third time we've sat down on recording before. We've done a couple of deals together.
Yep.
And sorry I didn't bring you on the podcast earlier, but I just didn't trust you, you know?
That's okay. Yeah, no, you were really feeling me out before you
Yeah.
got involved. Yeah.
Hey, Simple Passive Cash Flow listeners, please do me a favor. And if you haven't, go and review the show on iTunes so we can get on better guests and add more people to the network.
For sure.
Yeah, so we first met just a lot of our common friends, and we just got to kind of know each other over past year or two or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So
been a little over a year.
yeah, so I thought we'd get to know you. A good chance I get to know you a little bit better, and for the folks to kind of understand, you're an investor just like them, and kind of just like me, and it's kind of nice meeting people along the journey.
Yeah.
But to give a sense of where you're at, let the people know how much simple passive cash flow are you making today, and how exactly are you doing that?
Yeah. I mean, I would put a little bit of a spin on it because I do have another side hustle that is a residential appraisal business. So it's definitely not more passive related, but it is secondary income. And I group that into my real estate investments. So, but right now I'm pretty close to covering my expenses with all of it combined. So, um, yeah, I mean, we're still rolling as fast as we can to grow the appraisal business, but also at the same time, we did total of 5 syndications last year. And we've already done one this year, and we're looking to do a couple more here. So yeah.
All this while working a full-time sales job, which is pretty flexible, right? Like that's the
That is.
thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's like you said in your opening. I'm just like everybody else. I'm a corporate guy, still working a corporate job today, and I've got a small kids and a family. So, but yeah, real estate for sure is really um, it was the first endeavor into the simple passive cash flow, and it's no looking back at this point for sure.
All right. Any idea when the you're gonna pull the pin and go full time?
I don't know. When I grow up, I want to be like Lane, but I we'll see. I mean, part of it is, I mean, I'll be the first to admit, part of it is fear based. I think we could probably do it today if I really push myself, but in a corporate sales job, high tech space, comes with some decent bonus checks as well. And so it's just, giving those up is going to be, it's going to hurt initially, but I know I need to do it at some point. So we'll see. We'll reassess where I'm at the end of the year, unless something else changes.
Yeah, so take us back to we call this a Han Solo moment, and that's, if people don't know what Star Wars is, Han Solo and his buddy Chewbacca went on this tour around the world, and they were low life smugglers until they met the right people, and their life changed. What was that kind of moment for you when your kind of life took a pivot from just your corporate sales gig?
Yeah, I mean, it was at a time when things were going very well in my corporate life. Hitting my numbers multiple years in a row, hitting my sales quota, and things were going well. Promotions were coming along with that. But what I did see is my dad actually at the time worked for the same company, and of course he's much older, nearing retirement. But watching him go through that process of trying to find another job, is basically, in a way kind of forced out, to potentially retire. But I say potentially because he wasn't ready to retire, nor could he. He probably could if he drastically changed his lifestyle, both, with my mom today. But so I watched him go through the job hunt at 63, 64, however old he was at the time. and just realized I didn't want to do that. Instantly changed my entire perspective on what I was doing at that time. I was also getting my MBA. My company was paying for it, and I was halfway done. And that came to an abrupt ending. I didn't sign up for the next semester's classes, and instead I started seeking out alternative investments, things that could really help me generate cash flow. And so that's ultimately what led me to real estate
That's
and actually,
funny.
yeah.
There's actually a few people midway through that company paid MBA. I did that thing. I got the free masters with that too. Company paid it. So,
Oh,
but
there you go.
I mean, you're convicted enough to say no, thank you on that halfway and putting in the work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even fast forward, things in the corporate life have still continued to go well. Um, and at the same time, I was also starting a new position at my current company, still in that position today. And, but at the same time, I've continued to turn down some other promotions, even with that. I've got to, I'm careful about how I'm turning them down, but ultimately my thinking is, hey, I've got the flexibility today. I've got a pretty good handle on my role. And as a primary source of income, I can continue to operate at a high level in my corporate job, but also it allows me the flexibility to do the real estate investments and also getting this appraisal business up and running as well. And so just not really wanting to take on added responsibility in the corporate life has continued to allow me to be flexible on the side.
Yeah, that's a very common theme I hear with a lot of my folks. People in their early 40s, late 30s. You're sort of a veteran at your job, and people are looking to you to take over leadership positions.
Yeah.
But the various number of excuses, right? Oh, I'm a trust fund kid. I don't need money, or things that make sense to people that just explain that, hey, you're making money on the side.
Yeah.
What did
Yeah.
you tell them? Like, you just want to spend more time with your kids, or like?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really go into specifics. It's definitely more time with my kids, which, I'm not being dishonest when I say that. I mean, if I take on more responsibility, um, that would eat into my time with kids for sure. I mean, I've got to be pretty intentional with my time today, just kind of operating in 3 different areas. Um, so yeah, I was a kids and a family thing, and just overall not the right time for me at this point in my life.
Yeah,
And they're okay with that.
just tell them your wife's a doctor or something.
Yeah. I wish I was a trust fund baby or something like that too.
Yeah, I wish so too. But so were you investing before that happened, or was it about the same time?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely, I had always been really paying attention to it. I had done some flips. So, but it was nothing that was really, um, how do I build up my passive cash flow? Because anybody who's ever done a flip knows that it's not passive. And so I hadn't really stacked, I wasn't building a house flipping business, but, like any of the people my age going up, I was in college when Flip This House started coming out. And so, got that bug. And I just remember me and my roommates just watching that for days, and hours, and talking about how we wanted to get into that, and, never really took any action. And, but I did I did a couple, and then, the light bulb hit, or my Han Solo moment, when, as you call it, when I saw my dad get laid off. That's what really picked it up, and I just hit full throttle and bought 5 houses right away. Bought 5 houses within about 30 days. And because at the time I was going into it, hey, I'm just going to flip these. Um, Again, realized, hey, it was just like the last time. This is very intensive, time intensive. I was spending way too much time talking to my contractors. Um, Got through those projects. I actually kept a couple because they were decent rental properties, and then started moving down the rental property aspect of it. And At the same time that was going on, I could see that, hey, even if I kept these two rental properties, it's still going to require me to be somewhat involved, or really just for me, it came down to the scalability aspect of it. You know, how can I build up enough passive income to replace my expenses? That's my first goal. And so, you know, multifamily is really where that came into play, and I started going down that path, researching it, and ultimately buying. Um, well, I put a contract on a 21 unit. That deal fell through, but I purchased a 14 unit in that same time period.
Yeah, so fast forward a little bit, and
Mm.
this other kid was doing a podcast in Seattle, and then we met.
Yeah,
So we teamed up on this
yeah,
Huntsville deals.
yeah.
So I asked you, this isn't your first deal, but every deal there's good and bad things that happen. More times good, bad things that nobody ever hears about. But we wanted
Right,
to kind of like, there's always lessons learned, right? There's
right.
always going to be issues. So I had you prepare a list of 7 things to that you learned, just so that people can see the dirty side of this, and maybe think about things when they're doing their own properties, whether it's small stuff, just turnkey or whatever. But
Right.
the first thing you have here was not Googling the crime on the property. Where did this happen?
Yeah.
I hope this
So
wasn't the Huntsville one.
yeah, Lane, surprise.
Yeah,
No,
no,
no, it's um, no. This was a couple of properties before that. It was a it was a mid-size 56 unit property, um, and basically what happened. Thankfully, there was nothing crime related that had happened within a 12-month period, but there was actually a murder that happened on the property. It was not tenant involved, but it did happen on the property. That happened about 2 years from the time that we were purchasing it. Um, and what happened is it spooked the lender. It spooked the lender, and we were near the closing. I mean, this was like a week and a half before closing, and this was a Freddie Mac small balance loan. They came back and they said, "Hey, we told you we were going to give you 75% loan to value. Well, it's actually going to be 60%." And so ultimately, from that point, we were having to re-swizzle because it was just the other part of that deal was we had a 1031 exchange investor, and so our capital was somewhat fixed. And in an effort to not continue to complicate that side of things, we just went out and sought out a bridge lender. Somebody that could get us closer to 75-80% loan to cost. So, but and there's some other stories that I think we'll get into with that same deal as part of the lessons learned. But there were a few lessons learned from the closing of that deal. But specifically, now every time I go look at a property, before I even really run the numbers and start engaging with the broker, I just Google property name and shooting, and then property name and crime. I'm not kidding. It's not rocket science. You'd be surprised, like how many deals I have just completely walked away from without even, without the broker even knowing it, what happened. And if it's a broker that I have a relationship with, I'll say, "Hey, look, I just found this. Did you know about this?" 9 times out of 10, they'll say no. Um, and thanks for sharing, kind of thing. But so in a way, you're bringing them value, so they know you're going to do your homework, and you continue to build that trusted status with the broker community. But always, 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 property name and shootings.
Yeah, because there's also like third-party websites that can pull data from the police department, but the police department is a great
Yeah,
source of that. They have these nice
yeah.
maps.
I drill into those too. Especially if I don't see anything, and if I know, especially in a lot of the markets that I'm invested in, I know where some of the potential crime spots are. And if I don't find anything initially specifically tied to that property or the property's address, that's when I'll go ahead and drill in a little bit to some of those other websites. Trulia has a really good one, Crime Heat Maps. You can drill in. It's real quick. I'm all about speed when I'm trying to analyze a deal. And so just Googling address and shootings, or, using truly crime heat maps for the specific city, you can actually pinpoint the specific location and see what kind of crimes have happened on the property.
All right. You don't want any violent murders or homicides, but you're gonna have theft. You're gonna have vandalism for sure.
Yeah.
This is C class, B
Yeah.
class. You're gonna have it.
And I'll even go as far as saying, like, that deal has turned out to be a great deal. There's a lot of upside there. The rents were very under market, but the previous seller couldn't raise rents because they weren't putting any capital into the deal. But so we cleaned it up. We've had just some other minor issues that had occurred during the cleanup process, but nothing major. Things that are expected in a C-class property. But I mean, and then even shootings, even if there has been a past shooting or even a murder, just talk to the lender. I mean, if the faster you get that into the lender's hands, the faster that they can help you build a story around how they have to go sell to Fannie or Freddie Mac, if that's the type of path you're taking. Or if you're doing a bridge loan, even easier in some cases, because a lot of the bridge lenders, they pay attention to the crime activity, but at the end of the day, they're putting a emphasis more on you, combined with the property, that you can turn that around.
Did you have to do security, like the rent-a-cop, for a little bit on that property, or?
What we tried multiple times. Ultimately, there were a couple things that happened where it just kept us from hiring on the security officer. But right now, we're still looking at it. We really don't need it, knock on wood, because we've cleaned up a lot of the tenants. I mean, what was happening at the property was a lot of the tenants that were just attracting those types of people, they were drug dealers. I mean, and our maintenance guy knew exactly who they were. He gave us a list of people who he thought that were the drug dealers. Turns out you match it up with a rent roll, and they're the ones who have, this backdated rent, who haven't been paying rent. So we evicted them out. And it wasn't anticipated. We didn't think we were going to have to evict that many people early on. And so our occupancy went down pretty drastically, but ultimately it was for the better. But yeah, I mean, once we got them out of there and started renovating units, there were still a couple months of lingering where just vandalism and things like that. I mean, we had to go in and replace a couple things twice because of just issues, just tenants angry, on their way out kind of thing. But, fast forward that deal, we're back up to 98% physically occupied. People are paying, and we're getting our year 5 projected rents only 18 months later.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you kind of mentioned the second point, communicating with the LPs on the 1031, or needing extra capital on that one. Not more for and a lot of the listeners are more passives, but I think that's just a good point of, like, until the deal closes, a lot of this stuff isn't set in stone, right? And I think a lot of the packages are at a certain rate. It's nice when you can underwrite a deal and then you get lucky. I mean, how many times you put out a deal and it's like, oh, guess what, guys? We got really lucky. We got this interest rate, or an extra year IO, interest only.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that definitely happened. Sorry, I'm getting a little pop up there. But yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it's never across the finish line until it's in, and you've got to be flexible, even after closing. I mean, just like anything that you're dealing with real people in the corporate world, you've got to be flexible.
So the next point you wrote down here, not following up with the mortgage broker enough. What happened there?
What do I mean by that? Sorry, I wrote that last week. So
So
Um,
that's a funny thing. Like a lot of the stuff you write down or you got burned with is like second nature
exactly.
after it's all done.
Yeah. Well, number one, the lesson learned there is I really don't work with mortgage brokers anymore. I just go straight, unless it's a bridge, it's a property where we need a bridge loan. I'll just go straight to a main lender, which typically we're doing Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac lending loans. And so there's only a handful of lenders that can actually do direct. So, and on the last deal we did, Lane, from not the Huntsville but the Gulfport one, I had an awesome experience with that lender. Um, but the story is basically on one of the loan assumptions that we were doing for the syndications last year, ended up going through a broker just because there was a previous relationship between, the broker and lender. So it was natural for us to use that broker, even though we didn't have to. Um, they basically, from the time that due diligence ended to like 3.5 weeks later, he had not submitted the deal to Arbor in this case, which was they had the loan, which means we were going to be working with Arbor through the broker to go through the closing of the deal, to make, if that makes sense for your listeners. The problem with that is that 3-week gap, we basically just lost 3 weeks in the closing process. And so, when you build your timing in the contract to close a property, you have, what's standard nowadays, you have 30 days due diligence, maybe 30 to 45 days closing, with some built-in extensions where you can put down more earnest money to extend another 30 days. So we had that, but we basically lost, our due diligence during that time was 30 days, and then we lose 3 weeks. It really just put us off to a really slow start through the entire process. Ultimately, it cost us a little bit more money, just that came out of my pocket, and just to get the deal done. But it was necessary because we were raising capital on that deal. So just in an effort to shield our investors, it was just at the cost. But it could have been avoided had we just stayed on top of the mortgage broker. Again, they're people too. You've got to rely on them. If you're using a mortgage broker, you've got to rely on them to be communicating with the end lender. And in this case, it just wasn't getting done.
Yeah, so this is a little bit more advice for the more hands-on folks in the crowd.
Right.
There's a few of folks in the my mastermind, that are kind of going down this path, but just for the passive investor out there, you got to do these deals. There's mortgage brokers, but in my opinion, I'm sure Kyle will also say the same thing. They don't really add too much value other than taking a cut for themselves.
Yeah.
So if you know who the
To help.
players are behind them, you just go straight to them and cut them out, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's it definitely, in some cases they can help provide quotes. Like if you just need somebody to look at the deal and maybe you don't have a relationship, that's really where they will come in handy. But for me, just having done a few deals now, I pretty much I know the process for closing a deal and going through the loan process. So uh, I don't feel the need for a broker in my
Yeah.
case.
And one of those things is our investment criteria is pretty much the same, where we like stabilized buildings. So we're going to go
Right.
to a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac lender. There's not too many
Exactly.
of them. But if
Right.
you're looking to take on like a 60% occupied or one of those higher risk, higher return ones, yeah, you may need a broker.
Right. Yeah.
But
There are a lot of bridge lenders out there that would fit into that type of scenario that you just mentioned. There's a lot of bridge lenders out there, and frankly, I only know a handful of them, but they can definitely come in handy. A broker can come in handy finding the bridge lenders for sure.
yeah, so if you guys are trying to do that, well, you're probably listening to the wrong podcast. You need to change your your dial. Next thing you mentioned here, not having a relationship with the leasing person.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said they're working multiple deals for other people.
Yes. This was a recent
Must have been hard for
finding
you to find
for us.
this out, huh? What a
It
betrayal.
was. It was. Now, thankfully, the process to change property management companies was already, was already moving forward, and so we found this out in that process. But yeah, I mean, so again, more for the operator and the deal side sponsor and operating a deal. But I find it helpful to build a relationship with the person who's actually doing, who's on site at the property. In this case, it might be called a leasing agent. In a couple of cases, I know the leasing agent, I know the maintenance person as well. And so, really why that is because, you can just have direct contact with them in some cases to really find out information that maybe the regional manager from the property management company isn't sharing with you, or maybe they are, and maybe it's just good to have an open line of communication. But that was a learning experience. So in this case, we found out in one of our properties, we were operating two other properties. This is Huntsville. We were operating basically three properties out of one of the properties that had an office. So we had our three properties, and then they were also operating another three properties that weren't owned by us out of the same office. So people were calling in our office, coming in our office to pay rent, which, the reality is it probably wouldn't have been that big of a deal if the things that were happening weren't happening, which was sharing of our resources, which means we're paying that person full-time payroll. So in this case, we weren't, our payroll wasn't being prorated across the six properties that were being managed out of there. It was just, we were taking the hit. And the other part of that is they were also sharing materials. So, our maintenance wasn't staying on top of our staff. Our maintenance staff wasn't getting things done, getting our turns done. So there were a lot of things that probably could have been avoided had we just had that relationship. So
Right. I mean, it's fine because now in Huntsville we've got like a few properties there. It's fine when they're sharing resources amongst those three. But what was happening is there was another owner that they were also working for us. So that was the issue, just to be clear.
Well, three other. So there was basically those three properties were three different owners. So it was a total of four owners being ran out of one office. And this is, it's not the biggest office either. So
yeah, I was there. I saw it.
Yeah.
But this is like, like a lot of mom and pop investors, they go to some boot camp and they're like, oh, you just get the property manager. I'm like, dude, you're an idiot. Like,
you got to stay on top of
it. This is not going to work. You need to be there. You need to know what's happening because these guys will do this stuff to you. And then you fired them, right?
Just pay attention.
That's the next thing here. How long did you wait till you fired?
I would think for the people from the passive standpoint, it's critical that they can trust that the sponsor is staying on top of the property manager. So, maybe they make that through part of their vetting process or vetting the sponsorship team and things like that. But that's critical.
So how long, your other lesson learned here was like you didn't fire the PM quick enough. What?
Yeah, that one in Huntsville, we moved pretty quickly there. It was, it's basically a couple properties before that we learned, and it's, I don't know. I think from the time that we closed on the property to the time that we fired him, it was probably 6 months, which we knew, just looking back on it, we probably knew after 30 to 45 days that we were going to fire them. And I'll take the blame because I was the one that was saying, hey, I have a couple partners. Hey, let's just give them, we're only 30 days into this. Let's just give them a little bit more time.
In your defense, if you have the relationship with the person, maybe not the company, you try and work with people, right?
And that was exactly the case. I had spent a lot of time with that manager through they helped us through the closing process. they got in there, they transitioned everything over pretty quickly, but ultimately the reasoning for that one is, and they did a good job of evicting the bad tenants out, but they couldn't get the work done. They couldn't get the units turned fast enough, which ultimately suppressed us being able to lease up these other units.
Yeah.
So, again, I think, the way that I've changed my approach is to really kind of streamline. I feel like, from a management company perspective, maybe taking that down to 2 companies right now is what it's looking like, across just where the portfolio is for me, and you're a part of that. But so maybe just having, for the passive folks who are listening, make that a part of their question criteria. Like, hey, how are you managing these? How well do you know the property manager? Do you have a past with this property manager? And just making sure that they can trust them. If it's a first time relationship, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but if they say, hey, yeah, this is the first time that we've ever used this company, your next question should be, well, why are you using them? Who referred them? What references do you have? Things like that.
Yeah. And in your defense, I think people can sharpshoot this and say, oh, you didn't act quick enough. But, when I was there hanging out in the office and like the police officer came over, and then the police officer and the property management company, they were discussing all the problem tenants. They knew which ones were trouble.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of insider knowledge that was critical in the change order. But that's
right.
It's hard if you just boot them out day one. You don't get all that.
For sure.
And then your last takeaway here, not starting soon enough. This is kind of your own personal lesson learned.
Yeah. But I mean, I think it's a big one, whether the folks want to be on the passive side or even active side. I mean, active meaning going out, finding your own deals and putting a deal together. I mean, just getting out there. I mean, you can start small. What's your risk tolerance? I mean, I know sponsors who are, they'll allow people to come in. It's usually towards the end when they're trying to fill the capital stack, but they'll allow people to come in between $15,000 to $25,000 per investment. Generally our minimums are 50, but we've gone under that to, like I said, fill it up on the back end to just get the type of capital or hit our capital goals. Right. But so finding those types of sponsors is going to be key for your passive folks who don't have a high risk tolerance. But, it's really just a matter of getting into it, because for me personally, one of the biggest things that I've seen in how it's helped me just across my entire portfolio and all my streams of income is through my personal tax return. The tax depreciation that you get when you invest in these deals, and even as a limited partner, is amazing. And, it's really helped offset my primary income in the corporate world. And even to the point where this year, through talking to my what's it called? CPA, my tax team, they feel I'll be able to qualify for a real estate professional, which is going to be huge, even more so for me personally. So, that's not going to be the case for everybody who's investing passively by any means, but there are other advantages to from a tax perspective that you get. And I think most of the people probably listening to that understand that, but just take the action. And, it sounds hokey, but it's true.
All right. So what's your simple passive cash flow number that you're kind of shooting for personally?
Yeah, my personal is to continue. I'm almost to the point where I'm able to replace our monthly expenses, and then our comfortable. I say comfortable monthly expenses because if we needed to really cut back, we could survive. But our lifestyle with 3 kids, and the kids' activities, baseball, gymnastics, all that other stuff that they like to do. We've got our set number, probably 3/4 of the way there, and then to double that. So, start with replacing expenses and then double that. Um, and, those more or less shorter term goals, I should say shorter term, because I don't know how long it's actually going to take, but I've got some goals in mind. But that's kind of how I'm building it. Replace the expenses and then double that.
So when you do double it, what would be kind of your ideal day? Like, is your wife going to work, or are you going to quit first? Or who's quitting first, I guess?
I don't know. I don't, well, it would definitely probably be me quitting the corporate job. Um, we've got this business on the side too, the appraisal business. And, obviously I control my time as a business owner with my partner and I in that deal, or in that business. And we're scaling it up like the cash flow quadrant teachings of Robert Kiyosaki, where, you're leveraging the resources around you to run the business. Right now I am a big part of it, still working in the business and still operating the business, but being able to step back and have other people do the day-to-day stuff. That's the ultimate goal. Um, so I would be the one to at least quit the corporate job. My wife has also got her own goals. She's in the education space. She is going down the path of being wants to be a school principal someday. So there's definitely a larger purpose in her goals as well. And so that's why I say I'll probably be the one to do that.
Yeah, good for her.
Yeah.
Well, she did a lot of like teachers. Like my wife's a teacher, so they actually
Yeah.
enjoy their jobs. Where you and I could probably care less about ours.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. Yeah, for sure.
Something you guys recently thought about or did burn your cash on for time savings or improvement in quality of life?
So we're actually, they haven't started yet, but we're hiring a more or less like a personal assistant, somebody that, for me, I desperately need somebody who can, I'm thinking about it, that I can just show them how to just key some numbers in to analyze a deal. If they can just read a P&L statement that I get from a broker, at least set it up, get the actuals in there, I can do the rest. Or there's certain aspects of the appraisal business that I can also just start throwing to them as well. And then the other part of that is where it's more of an assistant versus like an executive admin is, using them in our house as well. My wife, I just mentioned, she works, as her career grows in the education space, her time is shrinking as well. So if we can have this person come in and maybe just start dinner or start cutting vegetables, whatever, just helping her in that space as well, just in every aspect of it. So that person is going to start, we're recording this first week of May. This person's going to start second week of June. So I'm excited about that.
I actually starting to buy these pre-made meals. So when I go to the CrossFit gym today, I got to pick up 10 meals. So we'll see how that works.
Yeah. Oh, we started doing that too. And it's just that we're even lazier. We're not picking them up; they're being delivered. So.
Do you pay the $3? What is it? $3 extra or $5 extra?
Yeah, it's through DoorDash. So I mean, it's awesome.
It's worth it, right?
Oh, absolutely. Even if you don't even if you aren't working, 3 jobs, or if you don't have even if you do have time, just allowing these types of things into your life, they've changed. They're game changers. Leverage the time that we're in today with the technology that's available to you in your personal life. That's great.
Right. I mean, another reason I'm doing it is because it's like portion control, since I don't know what that is.
It slows you down. Well, what happens if you just go eat 2 of them though?
Well, then I feel like a pig, right? I just ate 2 meals.
And you ate your lunch for the next day.
Yeah, and there's nothing more to eat. So, but so how much? I mean, I think a lot of people are doing this, and I think people feel a little shameful, right? Of like, oh, I have an au pair. But secretively, a lot of people who are building up passive cash flow are choosing more time with their kids. I know my parents, they were spending all the time going to the grocery store and cooking the damn meal and never had time for us.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, I am really big right now at this point in my life on, yes, I've got a financial freedom number and goals around my finances, but with my kids, and while they're young right now, just creating life experiences. And so, this is a real conversation that I'm having. I'm just being transparent. Like my wife and I, we're seeing this added income come in, and, we're occasionally looking at houses, because everybody can use the space, right? So, buying a little bit bigger house with a little bit of extra square footage, with a pool, this and that. And then, I keep coming down when I start looking at the numbers. If I do start going down that path, it's like, hey, I'd rather take that money that we may spend, because maybe our mortgage will only increase, a couple $100. What's a couple $100 over 12 months, right? Most people say that. But if I can stash that away and then go take a trip with my kids in the summer when they're off from school to a foreign country or something like that, that's the kind of stuff that I'm dreaming about right now. And so, that's what I want to be able to do, and why I'm doing what I'm doing around, the simple passive cash flow.
So what are you gonna pay this exec? I'm personally interested in this too. I mean, you're trying to find somebody who is gonna
Yeah.
give you a lot more value than you pay them, right? Like the perfect employee, right?
Right now, we're talking about 15 to 16 bucks an hour. And so,
Oh.
and this is in Texas. I mean, so the cost of living is a lot different than Hawaii where you are, but so I don't know what that type of person would make there, but, it's a good scenario for this particular individual. She just had a baby. So the baby will be, 6 months. So this is not going to be something that's going to be full-time initially, although, we're throwing it around. I mean, we'll see where this goes. But she's flexible. We're flexible. She's going to be able to bring the baby with her, or, just even in the comfort of her own home. And so, right now it frees her up too. It helps her out. It gives her the flexibility. It still allows her to, her situation, she's quitting her job to stay home with the baby, but, she would still like to have some sort of income. So
Well, there you go. If you guys know somebody looking to make $15-16 an hour in Houston, and I'll pay them $17-18 here in Hawaii.
Yeah. Are you going to cover their living expense too?
No. They can live on their own place, but they can come in the middle of the day and cook me food.
Yeah.
But they also learn about a lot of this stuff, right? I think, so I've tried to do the same thing. They say go to the university, like the marketing department or the comm department, because they don't have very good jobs, right? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Go find one of these guys and then bring them in as an intern and actually teach them how to build financial freedom. But I'll tell you, man, these kids are idiots. Like they want to go work for a big company making 40 grand a year, 50 grand a year, and they just don't get it.
No, I mean, this is actually a similar conversation that I'm having with my business partner in the appraisal business is, going out, we've grown our business. So we're trying, we're having to leverage other appraisers. A lot of the appraisers in Texas are just, near, they're baby boomers, they're near retirement. They're being very selective with their work. So they're kind of stuck in their ways. Our business value is quick turn time. So, quick digress. In the residential appraisal in Texas, the average turn time from the time that you order the appraisal to the time that they get it back to the lender, it could be 5 to 7 business days. And we've trimmed that down to 2 business days. But a lot of the older appraisers who've been doing it for so long, they don't want to do it. And so if we can take somebody fresh out of school and teach them, this is the way it is. It's just the way it is. So you want to be able to become an appraiser, you can kind of create your own path. The same thing with passive income. You can go out and seek out these investments. You can work in like an appraising type role where you can create your own destiny and save up money to invest passively as well. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it and correlating the two. And for us to grow and scale within that business, that's our model. We want to take people who are fresh, and train them up to fit our business model.
Well,
sorry to digress from that.
No, it's good. It's good. I think these are all the problems that passive investors are facing. Call them first world problems, but they're real.
Yeah.
So back to investing in the seller's market, what are you personally investing in?
So I'm still, I would say mostly multifamily. We've got active deals in the multifamily space. Always looking, and right now it's more so from a standpoint, I've built up enough relationships with brokers to, start getting first looks at the deal. I'm starting to look at other alternative asset classes, studying up on just, like a services based commercial retail, something that's really well located. I'm also looking at mobile home parks as well, figuring out that space to where you're essentially just the owner of the lot instead of, also having to maintain the actual residence itself. It's a little different business model. So we're starting to pay more attention to that. And, so I'm really, the way I'm thinking about this is not so much jumping around, to these different asset classes, but just being able to offer up, you know, this is how I'm helping our limited partners diversify their investments, where it's not just multifamily. It's, hey, we've got a multifamily deal here. We've also got maybe a mobile home park. Here's a commercial retail that's located in a great location. So it's kind of how I'm thinking about it.
All right. So wrapping up here, if you're a Tony Robbins fan, he talks about the art of fulfillment and the science of achievement. So what's your secret or hack to the science of achievement? How do you get stuff done? Any secret rituals or nighttime routines or habits that is kind of special to
Yeah.
what you do?
So I do have, I definitely have a morning routine. I'm just having the three income streams come in. I've got to be very intentional about how I structure my day. So I'll be honest, I get up, my alarm starts going off at 4:15. I usually get up at 4:30. And for me, I, open up my Bible, read, pray, and sit there and meditate for a little bit. And sometimes I'll journal a little bit. Sometimes, I may not, just depends on how I feel that morning. Journaling is something I'm still kind of dabbling with, but it's more so writing down my goals. And then I'll hit the gym. That's every day. And then I'll be back home at like 6:30. And then I get the kids ready and I take my boys to the preschool. Love doing that. I'm going to miss it. My middle son is starting kindergarten next year. So my wife's going to take him with her. So I'll only have my youngest. So I'll miss that for sure. But, and then like throughout the day, once I get home from dropping them off, I work in time blocks, and what that means to me is I really try to block off time in my calendar where maybe only at this time I'm only working on the corporate job. At this point in time, I'm only working on the appraisal business, or at this point in time, maybe I'm analyzing deals, working on real estate stuff. And for the most part, my scheduled calls that I have with my property managers, all of that is grouped inside those time blocks that I have for that day. So I would say, it's getting more challenging, especially the more properties that we acquire, to compartmentalize everything. So, but that's how I do it. And then I have a strict, like at between, I'm shutting down between 5 and 5:30, because my kids are home. I work from home. My kids are home around 4:30. And then I try to shut down completely until they go to bed. And then when they go to bed, it's back on. It's game time. So it's really catching up on the day, trying to get another couple hours in before I fall asleep and pass out and do it again the next day.
Something that came to mind when you're saying that you're kind of working in sprints, at the end there, when I got really unmotivated at my job, I would do the same thing, because if not, I wouldn't do any work,
Yeah.
work. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's what you're feeling like.
No, it definitely is. It definitely is. But that, honestly, that 3 hours at the end of the day between 5 and 5:30 until usually 7:30, 8 o'clock, when my kids go down, that definitely helps. Right. And so most of the stuff that I'm doing at night is not related to the corporate job. I mean, my corporate job is my primary source of income. They're going to get the bulk of my day. And so a lot of these other side things, I've got to make sure that I'm staying on top of it. But yeah, so at the end of the day, that's really where I'll catch up on like the appraisal stuff, make sure all our orders are in our software, or get back to brokers. I mean, commercial brokers, if nobody's ever dealt with them, they don't operate very quickly themselves. It's not like the residential the single family realtors, but they don't work weekends like your realtors do. So it's, you have more time. If you respond to them at night, that's what I found to be okay. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Lane.
So what is your secret hack to the art of fulfillment? Any way to contributing back, or any ways of keeping it all perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really trying to be more giving of my time with, it has to evolve my kids as well. So it's through coaching. I'm coaching t-ball for my son. That takes up a big part of our weekends. But I'm more than that. I want to be very involved with all the other boys as well. So, but I also do some mentoring at my wife's elementary school. So every week I'll go over there and spend 30 minutes, 45 minutes with my mentee over there, just talking about life, talking about everything. So, in addition to financially, we give back in many financial aspects, but that's how I get way more fulfillment through giving of my time than I do financially, for sure.
Cool. But yeah, thanks for jumping on. Anything we missed, and you want to get your contact information out there? You just got a new snazzy logo made finally.
Yeah, I know. Finally, is for sure. Yeah. So the company I operate under is True Point Capital. TruePoint, True Point Capital. My website's just truepointcap.com. And you can email me at kjones@truepointcap.com. I'm pretty easy to find on the Facebooks, the Instagram, everything, LinkedIn. I'm not hard to find. So,
all right, man. Well, yeah, it was good kind of getting to know you a little bit better and asking some of these questions that I wouldn't now, because it's a little awkward to know each other. But yeah, thanks for coming on, and thanks for everybody for listening.
Yeah,
See you
thanks a
guys
lot.
next time.
Take care.